All right. Hello, beautiful bosses. My name is Rosie, and I'm the calligrapher and engraver behind Wandercrafter, as well as the creator of the Craft Academy. So with calligraphy, I've had the pleasure of being able to work for amazing brands like Dior, Kerastase, and NBC. I've even created the Craft Academy, which is a coaching program to teach others how to work with their dream brands and elevate their, multiple forms of income and have a profitable business as well. So today I actually have a very, very special treat for you. I'm sitting down with Younghae, who is the artist behind Logos Calligraphy. So she is a beautiful soul that continues to be a positive force within the calligraphy community. She's also partnered with major brands like Sakura, Dyson, and has released multiple practice pads, courses, and even has an online shop. So she's recently published her brand new book, which is Classic Calligraphy for Beginners, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So as a thank you for our video, we're actually going to give you a signed free copy of Younghae's new book. Simply comment down below what you're most excited about with this interview. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any fun and educational videos just like this one. So without further ado, I'm going to present to you Younghae. So Younghae, do you want to give you a short introduction and tell us how you got started and what your journey to calligraphy was like?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. So my name is Younghae. I'm based in Southern California. People might know me as like the left-handed calligrapher. I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I started my journey in 2014 with pointy pen calligraphy. I actually first got exposed to calligraphy back in college. So this was like back in 2005 when I took an italic class, and I remember just having so much fun with it, but I never expected to go back to it. But then when I was a mom of 2 young boys under 3, that's when I signed up for a workshop for copperplate, and then it was just kind of just rabbit hole from there.
Yeah. It's funny how it starts off as like a hobby and then turns into an empire. So that's super cool. What was the entrepreneurship journey for you like? Was it pretty straightforward? Did you, like, as soon as you went full time, did it blow up? Like, what was that journey like for you?
So I would say that it wasn't something that was necessarily part of my plan, which is why I always say that it was an unexpected journey. When I signed up for that copperplate course, like it happened during like a really difficult time in my season. And so it was more for my like self-healing and for me to have a means to create something and to, find a form of therapeutic practice as well as reflective, meditative way for me to like write and reflect on certain scriptures and stuff. And so business and turning it into like a full-time gig was not part of like my goal per se. But as I slowly shared my work and practices on Instagram, people were just asking me, can you teach this? Like, I want to learn. And so I do have a background in hosting seminars and education. And so I figured, sure. I mean, I'm sure I could like put together some worksheets and like have fun. And I love connecting with people. And so that's just kind of how it started. It wasn't really like I had this like 5-year plan. I know right now a lot of my students sign up for my workshops and they from the get-go like ask me like, how can I turn it into a business? But for like my personal journey, it was more of like an organic and very like gradual like shift in how it like evolved into like what it is today.
Yeah. And you obviously have a massive following on social media. And, I actually found you back when I was also first starting. So I've been a fan of you since the very beginning of my own journey. So it's just awesome to be here sitting with you, interviewing you today. You've always been such a positive influence for my own calligraphy journey, and you've continued to inspire me every day since I've started. So literally this is a dream. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about like the business stuff at the end and like what tips you have for beginner calligraphers who are trying to make this a full-time thing. We do have a lot of viewers and followers who want to take this full time. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting topic to dive into. So I also wanted to ask you about your book because you just published it. Like I went to your launch party, which was incredible. It was beautiful. It was so awesome meeting you in person. I know a lot of the Craft Academy students are following you too. So it was like a celebrity moment for them as well. So I myself have like thought about creating my own calligraphy book, particularly for engraving because there's not one out there yet. So I've done a little bit of research, but like it's always so overwhelming with like the information that's out there. So it'll be great to talk to someone who's actually done it and done it very recently. Can you give us just an insight into like what your process was like? Because I know you wanted to create a book years ago, but that didn't really pan out. So give us a little insight there.
Sure. Okay. So, let's see. Okay, I have to think back timeline wise. Okay, so I would say for the past like 5 years, there's been a major like boom in like the calligraphy, lettering, and art creative books, and especially throughout the pandemic. Definitely, as more and more people start to take classes, I feel like there is like an interest in books like that. So I do feel like a lot of people within like the Instagram circle and in our lettering community has published books. Like I felt like even from like 4 years ago, or maybe like 3-4 years ago, I felt like a lot of my peers and a lot of people that I knew on Instagram were publishing books like left and right. Even from a couple of years ago, I've had like certain emails sent to me asking if I would be interested, but in that season, I just felt like it wasn't the right timing because for one, I felt like I didn't necessarily feel confident in publishing a book that I wasn't 100% happy with. And I felt like I needed more time to like grow in my own like personal, like, whether it be skill set or just like knowledge or practice, or I just didn't feel like comfortable per se. I didn't want to just publish a book because there was a need and I wanted to meet the need, you know?
Yeah. So when did you actually, I guess, when did you start learning calligraphy? When did you go full time? And then when did this first like book idea come?
My first pointed pen workshop in 2014. Okay. Because of the request for workshops, I decided to make it official in 2016 by launching my business and, registering all that. And then starting like 2017, 18, I would say that I started getting emails from like different publishers asking if I would be interested in writing a book, which I declined because I didn't feel like quite ready yet. I was still learning, I was still growing. And then 2020 was when this particular publisher emailed me and reached out to me. And I actually didn't respond right away. Okay, so they sent me the first email in August of 2020. And then I didn't get back to them until I would say October of 2020. I just needed, 2 months of like silence. I needed some time to think about it because I knew that this project was going to be like a huge like undertaking and it would take a lot of my time. I had to figure out whether I could set aside, bulk of my time in my schedule with all the different projects I had going on. And also it took some time to even, get on a call with them and see what their vision was, what my vision was, and like whether we can come to a middle ground. And I guess that's something we can talk about later with like the differences between self-publishing and like working with, an established like publisher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely excited to dive in there. Did they find you through like your website or was it your social media presence that kind of kickstarted that? Do you know?
I think they said they found me through YouTube, which is really funny because cool. I think it was YouTube and then they kind of found my Instagram through that. But I thought that was interesting because back then my YouTube and even now my YouTube channel is not really like the main channel that I focus on or that I put a lot of energy into. I had a couple of videos up there, but I would say that my main social media platform right now is Instagram because I've been on it for so long and I've been investing and sharing like my whole life on that platform. And so when they said they found me on YouTube, I was like, oh, like I was like thinking like, shoot, like what did they look at?
I guess that's a sign, right? Like, you never know who's watching. So like really just put yourself out there because, no people, like no one might see it, but then a publisher might see it and another business opportunity could knock on your door. So that's awesome. Definitely. Did they come in asking you or like knowing what direction it was going to go into already, or did they leave that up to you?
So I guess that goes back to the reason why I chose this publisher. So kind of like moving like a couple steps back. So during that season, when they first emailed me, I actually got on a call with like 2 other publishers who contacted me around the same time. And so I wanted to compare the differences between the 3. What I noticed was a lot of publishers, they have like the set vision. Like they say like, we need to find a calligrapher artist because we want want to publish a book about this specific topic, whether it be a book on like 10 calligraphic scripts, or they want a book about, I don't know, like a bunch of different things that they already have in mind, and they want to find someone who would meet that need, who would fit that specific like vision. And so certain like publishers, they already had like the cover design, and they already like had everything like set up. They just needed someone to kind of write their content and to put their name on it. And so for me, like I wasn't okay with that, because first of all, like I want this book to be something that I felt very strongly about. And so when I pushed back on some of the publishers, a lot of them were like, I'm sorry, like we can't budge like with this vision. Like this is like a set vision.
Interesting.
And I had like no idea, like
no creative freedom, right? And that's kind of like that's kind of the reason why we got into this business, is to have that creative freedom. So they really stripped all that away and said, okay, you just fill in the blank.
Exactly. And especially with the cover design, like some of them were like so not like on point with my brand. Like the colors, the font, like I had no say. And so obviously that was like an easy decision for me to say, okay, we're not like a good fit. I don't think, I wish you the best. I hope you find someone for this project, but I'm not interested. This particular publisher, they also had a vision. They wanted to find someone to write a book about 10 different scripts, like calligraphy scripts, to teach it, as well as 50 different projects.
Oh my God.
I know. And, and they had like a page limitation. And so for they had 144 page, like, it seemed like that was like pretty set in terms of they didn't want to make it super thick, because I know like other of my friends made books that were like over 200 pages. So that was interesting. That was a starting point. But with this specific publisher, I pushed back and I said, well, first of all, I don't know 10 calligraphy styles, nor do I feel confident to just kind of like, teach it and to write about it. I am very passionate about 2 specific pointed pen scripts, which I think are related. And so obviously copperplate Spencerian. For me, I felt like there wasn't a book right now in the market that touched upon those 2 scripts. And then also I told them, okay, well, the middle ground would be, I do feel like I can talk about the brush calligraphy aspect as well as the faux calligraphy, because, I can share a little bit about how people can use other pens to, still write in copperplate and Spencerian without using the specific writing tools. And so that's kind of like how it evolved. But it did take a lot of time, like back and forth, emails and calls, because the person I was talking to had to get the approval from like the people, higher up. And then the 50 projects, thankfully, it like went down to 30. And then we actually ended up cutting 5 projects because of page limitations. Because I had a vision for, I wanted my book to be highly like photo and visual like centered. And so I wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing, because there are other copperplate books out there, but it felt more like a textbook style and a lot of text versus images. And for me, I'm a very visual person, and I wanted someone to be able to, hold this book and be inspired by like the photos and like what they can do with it. And so instead of just having like a manual or like a textbook style, and so that was something that I actually asked them to give like an additional budget to hire an outside photographer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was something I was like nervous about, because I wasn't, I'm a first time artist. I know they're taking a risk on me, as well as I've never like written a book before. And so I've had like other books, obviously, like I teach and I have like other practice pads, but publishing a book is like a whole different like field. And so
because I know you mentioned that you had a lot of content already, like you've had 8 years of content basically to pull from. And you have this gorgeous aesthetic that you show on Instagram all the time. And so like we know your style. So what was that like, hiring an outside photographer to get additional content for you?
So I really had a photographer in mind, my friend Joy from Joy Theory Co. I had hired her for my family photos, and I just like love her aesthetics. It was very clean. It was like modern, clean aesthetics. And I like the way that she edited her photos to be very bright and inviting. And so I knew like I was going to work with her no matter what.
Okay.
But I think the issue was I didn't, I felt like she deserved to get paid for her, contributions separately from what I was contributing for writing the book. And so that's where, I wanted to ask the publisher for an additional budget to cover her photography costs, because we took like thousands of photos. And I think that was something that I didn't anticipate, because I knew I wanted a lot of photos, but I didn't realize how much time and effort and how much editing goes into literally like every single project. Because you have to take pictures of like every single step.
Yeah. So how did you sift through all of that content and get, pick the one photo out of the 50 that you took of that one shot? How did you sift through all that content and select the ones that actually made it in without getting so overwhelmed?
I mean, it was literally just like going through each one. Like, I think Joy sent me the link to like, what is it? The Dropbox or something, or some of her website. And I literally had to go through each one and heart the ones I liked. And then from that, she kind of narrowed it down to the photos that I liked, and then she edited it. And then I had to upload that into like a separate kind of like a sharing like platform with my publisher. And then their design team ended up laying it out together into the book. And then once they sent over the initial layout design, then I went back and I either told them to, like adjust it or, tweak it. And then we finalized it from there.
Okay. Very cool. So I wanted to kind of touch on like the self-publishing versus hiring a publisher. Did you look into self-publishing a book for yourself, or was it always like the publisher route?
No, I actually did consider the self-publishing route. I'm sure you might know, but Peggy Dean back then, I remember she had published like multiple books at the time. And her first book, I remember she shared that she self-published. And through that, I think that's how like the publisher ended up reaching out to her, and then she ended up working with a publisher for her next books. I think that was like in the back of my head. And so I looked into, what it's like to self-publish. And I did consider it, but weighing the pros and cons, I decided to go with the publisher route.
Okay. Can you share some of those pros and cons?
Sure. Okay. So self-publishing, I think there's a lot of like work upfront and time, and you need to be like self-motivated to meet your own deadlines. Obviously, you don't have anyone to keep you accountable to be able to write out your content, your whatever diagrams, layout, design, scanning it. Everything is kind of like on you, because you're owning this book from the start to finish. And so whether it be marketing or advertising or everything, like the whole 100% control is like on you. And so if that is like your personality and you feel confident to take on a project where you can give yourself deadlines, you can meet them and you can actually execute it, because I know for me, like, or anyone that even though they might be a type A person, like they might have like 10 different projects going on like that year.
Right.
And so oftentimes like the things that are like less priority are going to be pushed to the side. And so that's something that I was like considering, because I am a type A person, but I knew that I needed someone to keep me accountable, to give me those like hard deadlines, or else I knew it was just going to be pushed to the side.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, have you, like, when you were looking for publishers, did you ever pitch yourself, or was it just all inbound?
I would say that the initial like emails, inquiries that I gotten were kind of approached to me first, but actually in the middle of trying to figure out whether I was going to go with them or if I wanted to pitch myself to other publishing houses, I actually got on a call with a literary agent, because I know Jenna Rainey also published a lot of books. I reached out to her to see her experience with book publishing. I had talked to I think 5 different friends who had published a book in the past couple of years, because I wanted to listen in on their experience and just like pros and cons for that. My brother-in-law actually has a really good friend who is a literary agent. And so she was super kind and got on a call with me and kind of share with me like the difference between even working with a publisher directly versus having an agent represent you and be able to work with a publisher that way. Even with that, I had to figure out whether or not not it's worth the time to pitch myself to a literary agent so that she can now take my, book outline and be able to present it to various like publishing houses. And so an agent, I think, is an expert in the field. And so obviously she has a lot of connections to various publishers to figure out which one is the right fit for you and be able to kind of, push for you, whether it be financially or whether it be through the design aspect. I think you don't have to, if you feel like insecure about like voicing your opinions, I feel like the agent is there kind of like has your back to like, be able to share like, this is it, or like, that's it, they can do that because that's like their job. After talking to her, I was actually thinking about, maybe I'll work with like the literary agent and go that route. But then with that particular route at that season, it would take more time for her to be able to, present the outline, see if there's an interest back, go back and forth. Sometimes she says it takes like years, or up to a year to go from having like an idea to being able to actually sign a contract and start writing the book. And I think for me, I was in a season where I was ready to just kind of really like focus on it and be able to publish a book within that like season that I was in.
Very nice. And how long did it take you?
So I said they emailed me in August of 2020. And then we got on a call in November of 2020. And then my final deadline was August of 2021. Okay, so November 2020 to August 21. So it was about, what is that? December. So like about nine months. Yeah.
So this is literally your baby.
It is. Yeah, exactly. My book baby, which was pretty fast. Honestly, when they first got on a call with me, they wanted me to be finished by like I think it was June. They wanted it within 6 months. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, I had no idea the turnaround would be that fast. And also I had like other schedules and I had different commitments during that next like 6 months. So I was like, I had no idea how this was going to work out, but thankfully it like got pushed back until August. And then it took about like a year because it then took this past summer was when they were able to have the physical books in my hands.
Okay. Cool. So it took you 9 months to write, but like another year to get it all printed and finalized.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's still about like a 2-year process from like first inquiry to actually publishing and selling it and stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And obviously they're doing distribution for you, right? So like you can probably find your book in like Barnes and Nobles and Amazon, obviously. And they're also distributing it overseas, right?
Yeah, so that's so cool. So I guess that goes back to the pros and cons of self-publishing and working with a publisher. Obviously, if you work with a publisher, depending on who you work with and what their co-edition team looks like, this particular publisher, Query Books, like they did kind of market themselves as a very strong co-edition like team that worked to sell rights to your book to be translated in other languages all over the world. I'm not really familiar with how this works with other publishers, but this is something that they kind of presented themselves as like, this is our strong point. Even before the book release, like in print, they had already sold the rights to be translated into Spanish, German, as well as Korean, which is super special because I'm Korean.
So cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember calling my dad and I was like, because, my dad, he was so excited, obviously, like he was like, oh, my daughter wrote a book and he wanted to share the book with our relatives in Korea. Actually, my great uncle was a calligrapher in Korea. And so when I met with his, so my great uncle's brother's son actually is a calligrapher too. So I didn't realize, but I do have some, calligraphers in my family line. And it's actually in the intro of the book. I share a little bit about meeting my great uncle and then also the relative and how I don't know if I can show this, but this page right here. So they do a lot of the Korean traditional calligraphy, but so my dad was super excited to when I told him that I was going to be translated in Korean, they were like, oh, this is perfect. We can spread it to our family in Korea. But also, so I just got this today in the mail. This is actually a hardcover. So this is also interesting. I didn't realize about the co-edition. This one is translated in German. And so I was tagged on Instagram. I'll show you the back. Maybe I'll show you the differences between. So this is This is the book that, we published in the US, and it's being distributed worldwide in English, right? It's soft cover. There was like a misprint in the first round. So they had it at like a notch bound, but then the next printing will be in the lay flat. It was supposed to be lay flat, but obviously there was like things come up and there were like errors and issues. And so the next one will be printed in lay flat so that you can open it up and it will just kind of lay like open. Let me show you the cover. So this is the cover. So even with this part, initially the publisher didn't want any photos. Like the initial design that they had sent to me was all text, right? And I was very, and for me, again, I'm such a visual person, and I knew I wanted my book to have photos. And because I'm hiring like an amazing photographer, I wanted to showcase her work in the front of the cover. And I feel like the book cover is so important for people to, be able to get a sneak preview for what's inside. And then it also shares like aesthetics, right? To pull people in.
Yeah, I feel like as artists, we're very visual creatures. So it's beneficial for us to buy something with photos on it.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I'm glad you fought for that.
And so it was hard, but we talked about it. And then, so what they share with me though, their expert, is that like, if they wanted to have this book in places like Joann's or Michael's or craft stores, they said that usually the way that the books are displayed, you know how, let's say,
like a magazine,
like kind of like this.
Yeah.
Then it's going to cover the bottom part of the book, and they're only going to be able to see the text part.
Sure.
And so they were, which something I didn't know. And I really appreciate their insight to this. And this is why we decided to do the top part of the book with like a bigger like text, so they know what to expect, so that's why we said classic calligraphy. And then we wrote in the copperplate spin serine on there so people know what to expect. But then, we were able to add in the collage, which I love. But then if you see the differences, like with this German one, with this particular book, they changed it, they added the blue, but the bottom is the same. But I noticed that there is slight design differences, so the back part is similar, but just the bottom part, they added like the black like text box here. And then they make it into a hardcover. So what I didn't realize was that when you sell your books to other countries and you sell the rights to be translated, the other countries, they have the right to kind of make those changes. Like, so if they wanted to like publish it in like a hardcover, they're able to. So I didn't know that, but that's something that I find to be kind of cool too. Yeah.
Okay. So I do have another question for you. And that is, what was the budget like? Because I know they probably give you an advance and then they give you some other stuff, but can you tell us like what the budget like was in the very beginning and how you allocated that? And I guess how much do you end up paying yourself? I mean, you don't have to get like super specific with numbers, but just give us like a ballpark to see like if it's worth it for us to do it in the end.
Right. For sure. Okay. So, they do pay the authors like an advance fee. So it could be like a flat rate. So I've had proposals as low as $5,000 upfront, and then you can get paid up to, I don't know, like $10,000 to $12,000. And I'm sure maybe if you are an experienced, successful author, you can probably push for more. But I would say anywhere like for the first time like authors, I would say, I don't know, 5 to like 10,000 can be like a good starting point. And then from there, they do negotiate and agree upon like the royalty rate. So you get like, let's say like 8% to 12% of the book retail price. Yeah,
that's going to be like good passive income for you.
Yeah. Depending on how the book goes and like how it sells over time. Yeah, I'm like super excited. I mean, more than like the royalty rate, because I feel like, I guess like there are ways to like push for more. And if you work with an agent, you probably can get more. And there's like if you self-publish, actually, that will be the most profitable because you do put like a lot of money upfront to buy and print out your books. But in terms of like all that, like, aside from like printing costs, like all of that rest is your profit. And so self-publishing is more, I guess, like profitable compared to working with a traditional publisher. But again, the pros and cons are the publisher can get your books into worldwide distribution.
More exposure. Yeah.
Right. And so that was something that I valued more than trying to like ship out books and store like thousands of books in my garage,
Right. Yeah. I guess that's one thing that you don't really think about when you're self-publishing or creating your own book. Okay. So what are some of the benefits that you've experienced so far since launching this past summer?
Okay, so it's been a couple months. I would say that the fun thing is just reading the reviews on Amazon and hearing the feedback from people, and being able to meet people who somehow found me through Amazon. So I don't know if you know, but like at the book launch party, there was a woman there who actually found me through Amazon.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Because usually it's like either a student or like an Instagram or someone. And I was like, oh, how did you, hear about this party? And then she was like, oh, I was just searching for like calligraphy books on Amazon and I saw your book. And then that's how I found your Instagram, your website. And then I saw that you're having a book party. And then she was like, and then I'm local. So then I just like came by and I was like, really?
Wow. Yeah. So you get brand recognition, obviously. There's monetary benefits, self-fulfillment, right? Like knowing that you created this book baby and just having that in your resume, essentially.
Right. No, it's definitely like something that I feel so honored, and I don't regret like taking that year to really focus on writing a book. I just felt like, I just felt ready. Like, I don't know if the intuition or like this gut feeling that like, it's like 2018, I wasn't ready. Like I knew like this is going to stress me out more than give me joy. But like this past year, like from 2020 till like today, I felt like after teaching for so many years, after reaching more people, and there have actually been requests for like, can you write a book? It would be so nice to have like a coffee book. One of the reasons why I felt like also pulled to write a book was because of the creative projects, because most of my classes are very instructional. They teach you like all the technical, ins and outs of writing copperplate in Spencerian, but I never, taught a lot of workshops or classes on how to turn that into like tangible projects. And so that part of the book was actually all new to me. The Spencerian and the project was a huge part of the book that was like all new content, because copperplate at the time, I was only teaching copperplate and flourishing. And so that one, I was able to kind of like reuse some of the material and be able to edit it and kind of, but at the same time, I did write out each of the letters again, because I didn't want to use like older script. And so I rewrote a lot of like the scripts that you see in the book. But the project was actually like all like new ideas where I wanted to figure out how to make it beginner friendly, because the publisher was very big on, they don't want to make it complicated and that you have to buy all these like machines and like all these like Cricut like, Cameo stuff. Whatever they can use from their home. And so that was more of a challenge for me to simplify kind of like the project ideas and be able to reach out to people who are they're not going to like break their bank spending $25 on a book versus spending like $50 on my pads or like a couple $100 on my courses. And so it was a way for me to offer something that was very reasonable, like $25.
Right. Like lower barrier to entry and making it more accessible to a lot of people. And I love that you talked about getting to a specific point in your creative journey to where you felt like you were ready to write a book because you had the experience, you had the messaging down, and you had like the content already. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think that'll inspire other people to kind of get ready for themselves as well when they get to that point. So
yeah, I think one of the things I did want to say is like not to feel like pressured, or just because other people are doing it doesn't mean that you feel like you have to jump on the bandwagon like right now. I feel like, with social media, there's this constant pressure of like, am I doing enough? Am I doing it as much as the person next to me? And there's always like this comparison, which really like sucks, because I feel like we're all in this like unique journey where you're supposed to take the step forward according to like what you're able to do and in the season that you're in. And I feel like that was something that I had to wrestle with in the beginning, because back in 2018, when everybody was publishing a book, or 2018 to 2020, everybody was like putting out books. I did feel like, oh, how come, should I be working on a book? Like, should I be, reaching out to publishers? But I'm really thankful that I waited. Yeah, I feel like I feel much more at peace knowing that, I took the time that I needed to, start on this project.
So let me ask you, one of the things, even now, I've been in the industry for almost 5 years now. I've been doing live events for 3 years. I personally still experience imposter syndrome, even if I have, students and I have other, mentors and stuff to look, to kind of follow. Do you feel that kind of imposter syndrome where you are in your journey as well, even though you've been in it since 2016?
Maybe in the beginning, when I was just learning and I was looking at, a lot of looking to other people for inspiration and to kind of draw in like the content part and to like influence my journey. Maybe there was a little bit of that, but now I really feel like I have like this healthy boundary with social media where I'm able to like log in to share my work and to encourage other people. But then I always like tell like people like if you feel like an imposter, it's like when you have like someone else's work, right? Like open and you're creating, but then you're looking at that as a reference. Yeah. Whereas like I encourage, students like, yes, learn, but then when you're actually with calligraphy, maybe it's different. I don't know, with painting and other forms of art, it might look different. But with calligraphy, everybody's learning copperplate. Everybody's learning Spencerian. I try to focus on like, even my teaching methods. Like sometimes I could think, oh, I wonder if like people think like this teacher is better, or like if like but I try to focus more on like how I like to learn and how I like to teach, as well as when I'm practicing, to be able to like not like look at references like right away, but you can study it. But then I usually like close the books and I try to just look at like the paper in front of me and be able to, if I'm designing like, a calligraphy piece, or if I'm painting or something, to not have a reference right there. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
So just using it for reference and then closing it and not using that again. I think that's a pretty healthy way to set those boundaries and make sure that you're not creating that imposter syndrome for yourself. This has been such an amazing interview so far, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of our viewers to potentially think about writing their own book when it comes time. So let me ask you, what's your favorite part about owning your calligraphy business?
I would say, like going back to what we talked about before, it's like the ability to have the full creative freedom to do what I love. And as like, both you and me, owning our business and being able to make the big decisions, like, that's best for our business and for ourselves. And so we're not reporting to anybody to tell us like what to do, right? And so if I wanted to, like, with cursive, like that was something that I felt passionate about because I have kids, and I really wanted to pass down my love for cursive to my sons, who are now 8 and 11. And this is like their prime, years where they're learning handwriting. For me as a mom, I felt super passionate about, I wanted to leave a legacy for my kids and share my love for penmanship so that they will love like writing versus like turning to like digital, like, means to, whether it be iPad or whatever. And so like, I didn't care if like people were not like, if it wasn't trendy. Like I didn't care if like people were not really super passionate about cursive, because I was. And that was something that I loved doing. I loved teaching it, and I loved creating my cursive workbooks, and then being able to then inspire other people to be able to see the importance of handwriting. And so we have like the full like creative like freedom to be able to move where our heart leads us. And I think even earlier on, like when people were asking me for like wedding invitations, designs, or like to work on stationery, with calligraphers, there are going to be requests, right, that are going to pull you in all directions. And but for me, you quickly realize like what projects give you life and what projects drain your energy, And so for me, I did some weddings and maybe one or two, but it wasn't like something that I was so excited about. I would love to do it for a friend or family, but I didn't want to make my whole job and my time spent on, working with clients to create like wedding invitations, which I think are beautiful. And I look at stuff like I see like letterpress stationery, and I'm like, I wish I could do more of that.
I know, same. So I love that you said that, because in my program, we actually talk about what's called the North Star. And the North Star is like your mission behind your business, your why, and what really inspires you and lights your soul on fire. And for you, it's very obvious. It's like your passion for calligraphy, your passion for inspiring other people to learn calligraphy and cursive. And I think your journey clearly identifies like what your North Star is and what projects really bring you joy, and really just staying within that and figuring out what your niche is going to be. So your niche is primarily education.
I would say.
Yeah. So I think it's very clear. And I think this is a great example of someone who has found their niche, has found their passion, and is really staying within that lane. And you look incredibly happy with it. Like, you created a book. And so I think, that's just one of the great examples of what you can do when you finally figure out what your North Star is. So thank you for sharing that. What was like one of your biggest challenges that you've experienced in your business?
I would say it's probably the need to wear like multiple hats in one day. I feel like we have 24 hours in a day, and even that, like, you can work like 8 hours in a day, but within that 8 hours, like one moment I am, like making big decisions on like what to do with my business. And then I'm like packaging my orders. I'm driving to UPS. I'm like working on emails. I'm doing marketing. I have to like show up on Instagram for like content creating. And then you're working on like, website like updates. And then there's just so much to do. There's, people ask me like, some of my relatives are like, how's business going? Are you busy? And I'm always telling, because I think they worry that like calligraphers and creative artists don't have much to do. I feel like, the mindset, I think the mindset is like, oh, like, is it sustainable? Do you have enough to do? And I'm always telling them, I'm like, I have so much to do.
Yeah. Like, literally, I don't think they understand how many hats we wear throughout the day. And in the like 1 hour of working, you can wear like 6 different hats, and it like really is draining. It's so tiring. So how do you balance that entrepreneurship and wearing all of those hats?
I think like depending on where, like how big your business is or the space that you have to work with. I mean, I could hire, outside help. Like you just, like you probably hire like different people to help you with other aspects of your business. I do want to get there someday, but right now, this is like my first space, like outside of my home. And it's like, it doesn't have like all my packaging and everything in here. I think eventually I would want to have help with all like the, that aspect, running my shop aspect. And so that I can focus more on creating and putting out resources, because that's like what I'm passionate about. Yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at right now in terms of, I don't feel like I have the right balance right now, because I am doing a lot. I'm doing like pretty much like everything. And then I have my husband to help me with like the packaging or like the shipment. But generally, I am running a lot of different like aspects of my business. Eventually, I do want to come to a place where I can outsource, things that are not going to take up so much of my time.
Part of scaling is offloading a lot of the items that are not your, within like the creative range, right? So I feel like as entrepreneurs, we really have to find that balance of like, what is something that is extremely vital to the business that I have to do that anyone else cannot? And then really prioritizing those, and then outsourcing, maybe hiring like a nephew or a sister or something to like come with someone to come help you like pack some of these things that you don't have to do. So that's kind of what I do too, is like I actually have my sister come in every so often to help me with like sending out packages and stuff. So yeah, it's super helpful to have other people that can help you with that portion. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting their calligraphy business and might be struggling to scale it to a point where you are?
I guess if you're just starting out, and if you are desiring to build a business, I wouldn't make like finances like your ultimate like only goal. I mean, obviously we all want to be successful, we all want to like make money and be able to provide, but I would say to ask yourself like, and remember like why you started. Like, why did you start on this journey, and what is the impact you want to make to this community and to people? Like, what kind of impact do you want to make in people's lives through the job that you have? For me, being able to help people in their creative journey, it's not just about, I want someone to learn calligraphy, obviously like that is what I do. But recently I've been getting some messages from my students who share about how they're going through their cancer journey, or they're going through different trials in their lives, and how learning calligraphy has been like a source of healing and a joy in their life. This is how like calligraphy has impacted my life. The fact that like I was able to turn to creative, outlets to be able to find like joy again, and to find something to be excited about, And so when I recently got that email about someone who was wrestling with like and going through a really difficult journey in their health, they were sharing how like, they basically was like encouraging me, know that you're making an impact more than just Classic Calligraphy. And I like love that. Yeah. Like emotional.
That like gave me chills because I get that those comments from my TCA members every so often too. And I'm just like crying inside because I'm so happy. So I love it. So I have just a couple more questions before we close.
Sorry. I do have like
a
couple more things I do want to say is that, also like when you're starting off, like, there's so many like risks, right? There's a lot of fears that you might have, whether it be to post that certain like reel or like to post a certain video or to reach out to a company and say, hey, I'm a calligrapher. I want to do live events for you, or to kind of be proactive about like going after what you want to. And I think failure is part of the success journey.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that you have to get super discouraged just because one door shuts doesn't mean another one is not going to open. As I share with you, like even with this book journey early on, there were interests, but again, remember like the whole vision didn't align. And so that door shut pretty quickly. And I had to wait another 2 years before like another opportunity came up. And so for me, I don't see that process of saying no to that first opportunity in 2018 as like a negative thing. I actually think that helped me to realize what kind of publisher I want to work with, even for anyone who is figuring out, okay, should I do wedding invitations? Should I do stationery? There's so many things you can try with calligraphy, and maybe it takes like a couple $1,000 loss, or maybe it takes like a failure to be able to realize, what, this is where it's like pivoting me towards, and this is what I'm going to try before you're able to, experience success.
I love that. I love that because I say that all the time to my students. We have people who really want to do live events, and that's kind of the niche that they want to break into. Right. And a lot of the times, even though we give them pretty much everything they need to pitch, like we give them the elevator pitch, the template, the brand deck, like literally all the templates that you could possibly need to do the pitching, and they'll reach out to, maybe 10, and then maybe one person will say yes. And that's kind of the normal, that's like putting yourself out there. And like the more no's you get, the closer you get to the yeses from your ideal client. And in addition to that, it's not a no, it's a not right now. And so that's one of the things that we really hammer into our students. And I love that you like literally just reiterated that. So
we're on the same page.
Yeah. I feel like, the entrepreneurs, we all learn kind of the same thing, even though we have different niches and journeys. So it's really getting to that failure moment and like learning from it and just moving forward, so cool. So having known all of this experience and being in the industry for so long, what would you tell yourself in 2016, knowing what you know now? I shared it before, but in my practice sheets, in my first practice sheets, because I was a lefty, I am a lefty. What do you mean I was? And so I think like the beginning for me was like really difficult for me to figure out like my pen hold, my paper angle, and try to even find other lefty calligraphers was really difficult. And so I do remember sitting in that first workshop wondering, man, am I in over my head? Because it seems like everybody in this class are right-handed. My teacher's right-handed, and I don't feel like it feels normal. It felt so hard. And so I did scribble on my first practice sheets. I wrote, don't give up too fast. And then I kept practicing the word persevere. I love that. Yeah. And I kept it. I'm still like happy I kept it, because now I have it in like, I have this binder with all of my copperplate workshops and practice sheets that I save. And I still have that sheet from 2014. And it's like all in like this, like, it was like back when I used a straight holder. I wasn't even using an oblique, and my letters are like whatever, but it doesn't even matter. I felt like in that moment when I was struggling, I was just kind of mentally telling myself, okay, it's too early to give up. Like you cannot give up. And so I think that's basically like what I always go back to even today. I think right now, even though I may have built up like my business to a certain point, I do feel like there are definitely moments when I become very vulnerable with my husband or my friends. And I'm just like, I'm tired. It's not always glamorous, and building like kind of like vouching for yourself, running a small business, wearing multiple hats, it's exhausting. And actually recently
journey, I've seen like some of our peers kind of like step away from this business, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, wow, like I wonder, what they're doing now, or I wonder like why they decided to quit. And I do go through those thoughts sometimes, but then I go back to those words, remember why I started, remember the impact that I'm making on people, and try to like look at the pros and cons and whether or not it's worth it for my time to invest in. So I think for me, like even today, I like to like remember those words that I wrote even from back in 2014, to not give up and to persevere through even like the hard times and seasons that come. In the end, I'm so grateful for like the opportunity and the ability to run my own business and to do something that I love, and to spread like the positivity and the impact that art has on people's lives that go beyond just writing beautiful letters.
Oh, I love it. One of the things that I also do is create what's called like a hero list, which is, it's also in a binder and it's on the cover of it. And it says like all the accomplishments that I've ever done, how many students I've helped, how many brands I've worked with. Like even if it's just like a really small sale and you just started your business, I would still write that down on the list. And inside the binder could be all of the work that you've created in the past from the very beginning. So that you can actually remind yourself like, this is where I started, this is how far I've come, and this is how far I can go. And that's one of the things that we, really inspires me on the days that I am tired. There are days where I'm like really down on myself too. And my fiance is like, what's wrong with you? But just having those binders and those like pieces of paper to remind you, like it makes a huge difference. You've accomplished so much in your entrepreneurship journey. What's next for Logos Calligraphy?
I mean, right now, I'm just, I launched like a new online course for spin Syrian because it's been something that I've been wanting to teach. And obviously, I've introduced it in the book, but I never really, I don't know why. It was, again, one of those things where I wanted to stay in my comfort zone and do copper plate and flourishing and what I've known. And taking on like a new course, it's like such a huge undertaking too, to a lot of time and goes into it. But right now, that's kind of like what I'm in right now. I'm in the middle of still like finishing up like developing my courses, and then I do have some like little side projects that I love doing and that I'm working on, whether it be contemplating like putting out more products, whether it be like for home decor or like things like that. Nothing super concrete, but like again, like we do have the freedom to try like mini projects and fun projects. I don't want to just stick to like, I love teaching, but I realize that I do need like other different outlets to be able to use my creativity to like kind of like refresh like me.
Yeah, I love it. So this was an incredible interview, and I think you have inspired so many, like literally hundreds of thousands of people to start their calligraphy journey. And I know you've taught a ton of people as well. So thank you so much for coming on. I think we've talked about time, and I really value your time. And thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. So for everyone else, if you loved this interview and learned a ton from it, because I know I did, definitely hit that subscribe button and, make sure that you don't miss any more of our fun educational videos. So Younghae, tell us where we can find you.
Well, my handle is Logos Calligraphy. Logos, LOGOS _calligraphy on Instagram. And then my website is logoscalligraphy.com. I do have links to YouTube channel. I'm trying to focus a little more on my YouTube channel, as well as I'm on TikTok, but not as much.
Yeah. I mean, you already have a massive following, so I don't think you need it. But I will link all of that down below, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming up for you next. And maybe we'll do another catch-up interview when things change again.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Younghae.